So, very good morning to all of you who are here, or good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you are. And also the same, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good anything, good everything, for those of you who are watching this on YouTube. So this is the 8th in our series on voidness of everything and compassion for everyone. And let's start with a really excellent motivation. Let's turn on the light in our hearts. And sorry, I'm remembering in the 1973, I think, we had a really terrific Zen master in Samiling, Soshu-san. And he was the deputy abbot of Ryutakuji. I don't know if you know Zen monasteries, but Ryutakuji is a really great one. Anyway, he was there. He had very little English, and at one point he said, "Turn on the light." And so one guy who was a bit nervous jumped up to turn on the light switch, and then he finished his sentence, "In your mind." So let's turn on the light in our hearts and feel as much love and care as we can for all other sentient beings, and very specifically those that we know, that we've met, that were our parents, our family, our friends, our enemies. They're very special in our own karma. And then this world that we're in, and then all those other worlds we hear about and believe exist, but we don't have direct experience of. So anyway, let's find that love and care and our own wish to follow in the wonderful footsteps of all the Buddhas and all the Bodhisattvas who set their hearts on enlightenment so they could really be perfectly equipped to help other beings. We take refuge in the Buddha, in the Dharma, and in the community of most noble minds. From this moment on, until we reach the very heart of enlightenment. Through our practice of generosity and all 6 transcendent virtues, may we reach total awakening and every enlightened quality to be able to truly help sentient beings so lost in samsara. May each and every being be well, live long, be healthy, be well provided for, have good friends, find respect, live in places of peace and plenty, and most of all, may they practice Dharma. May they each create the causes for these good circumstances to be their wealth in future lives. May they be free from suffering and from creating causes of future suffering. May they discover the natural, sacred well-being that's totally beyond suffering and attain the great equanimity that's free of closeness or distance from anyone. Deyata shame shamawate shameta shatru kure marajite karota keyori tejowati oloyane beshuda nemale malapanaye kukure kaka grasana umuke paramuke amuke shamme dawane sawagraha bandhanane grihitva Savabhava pravadina vimukta marabhasha savidva buddha mudra anudgatita savamare butsarita parishuddhe bigashantu savamara kamane. Glorious Guru, source of all blessing, ever present above our heads on lotus and moon seat, through your immense kindness, ever sustain us, that the accomplishments of body, speech, and mind flow from you, and we are one. So thank you. This is our now 8th session. It's not going according to plan. By now we should have been steeped in compassion for everyone, and we're still in the voidness of everything, but I can't do it any other way. So, and then compassion is such a big topic, and in many ways we did it through the 6 paramitas, which is compassion in action. But anyway, I think today it's more than tidying up loose ends, but it's what else needs to be said about our journey through the stages of reflection or contemplation, and then eventually meditation on the different levels of voidness. And then in our own practice, if you are guided by a good teacher, it may not be that obvious or structured, but our own meditation has to follow the journey that we've gone through. All of us start thinking of ourselves in a very kind of solid, different world that's other than us. And here we are, a mind in a body, toddling around in this world, having our adventures. And we have to deal with that and work with it and work with all of the complexity of who we are. And then bit by bit we discover the mind, this treasure, mind, its potential, and how everything is mind. And then, and so on through to Madhyamaka. And then when we think about Madhyamaka and all of the theory that's there, and how that destroys so many illusions, and it opens the doorway to a non-conceptual wisdom. So then sort of the implications, the consequences of that journey of thought, the graduated steps of meditation, took us to rang-tong and zhen-tong, which we did in the last session, and in particular the zhen-tong, where we get as kind of a double affirmation of Sunyata, which all of this has been about, 8 sessions on Sunyata. We get a double affirmation in that the voidness of anything, voidness meaning, remember the definition of voidness, it should have been key all the way through, the wisdom that understands the difference of how it seems to be and how it really is. So that wisdom, no, I lost the thread of what I was saying. Totally. Oh well, never mind. That's another one gone. Maybe it was an illusion. So
2 affirmations.
2 affirmations, thank you, yeah. So the one is that nothing exists as a thing in its own right, because it's connected to everything. It depends on everything, through time, through space. So when simultaneously, as you understand this absence of own entity, you have to understand the presence of everything. That's why it has no own entity, because it is dependent on all other things to be what it is. This famous tree that I asked you to go and look at and sit in front of and contemplate again and again, not think about it, but to actually work out what was there and what was your own sense impressions of it and so on, and where was the tree and what is the tree and what's its own isness and all these kind of questions. The fact that looks like it does, with the shape it does. That's only for humans who've got eyes. No eyes, no shape. The tree doesn't have its own eyes to see itself. Can't kind of look at itself and say, oh, I'm a tree. Only beings with eyes see the shapes and the colours. Only beings with ears hear the winds rustling, the leaves rustling in the wind, and so on. So it's very profound. This is very mysterious, but nothing has own identity, because the tree depends on your eyes and ears to be what it is for you. What is it in itself? Everything depends. To grow, it depends on what comes up from the soil, what comes down from the heavens. What comes down from the heavens as rain depends on the movement of the earth, the movement of the entire solar system, and that depends on the movement within the galaxy. And our galaxy is part of this huge, huge cluster of galaxies. All of that to make that tree what it is. So that is such a kind of, it's because of the isness of everything changing all the time that nothing has own fixed identity. So that's one affirmation. Then on a deeper level, everything that appears is in what we call relatively our mind, and the true nature of mind is Buddha. So that's the other affirmation of zhen-tong. There is nothing other than that Buddha mind. And we kind of got to that at the end of the last session with a very important example, which is the example of dream. And it's an example to explore again and again, like the tree. We need to go and sit in front of a tree or a rock again and again to try and work out what's really there, as opposed to our version of what's there. And so dreams, Buddha actually gave 8 key examples, but 3 of them are very often repeated. Like a dream, like a mirage, and then the last one is translated like a magic show or like a conjuration. So like that, there are 8. There's a rainbow, there are other ones, but those 3 are very often quoted, and we need to realize that Buddha was not just being a poetic Indian. He wasn't just saying, oh, it's all like a dream. And he wasn't saying, it's like a mirage. It's like I don't know what you'd say. In English, you'd probably not say a magic show or a conjuration, because what do you think if I say magic show or conjuration? Rabbits out of hats, women being sawn in two, and that kind of thing, card tricks, and stuff disappears. That's not the example. It's very specific, and it works out to what we call hypnosis in English. So I've often explained this in the talks, but each of these series of talks needs to be standalone. So please forgive me if I explain it briefly again. You see, in ancient India, they didn't have TV and cinemas, not yet, and very little theatre, some travelling performers. But what they had, and just afterwards think about how incredible that was for people, were professional hypnotists. So they come to a village, and you pay your money, and then you sit down with them. Now, if you've sat down with them because of their hypnotic power, then you start seeing, as they tell the stories of the gods. And you actually see them. You actually see the gods in a chariot, and as they tell the story, then they're fighting, and there's love, and all these things, just as if you'd seen it, like we would see it these days, in a movie theatre. People saw it because they were hypnotized. it says if you look from a distance, so if you hadn't paid the money and you weren't being hypnotized, you just saw the person talking to the group of people and pushing around stones. And the stones were the people, the chariots, the objects. For him and for us, people looking from a distance, but for the people hypnotized, they were up there in the realm of the gods. And when the show was over, they were back down. They had the experience of a lifetime. I mean, how else are they going to experience that? They could imagine it because they hear the stories, but they're, with the help of the magician, the hypnotist, they're actually there. They're actually there. This was fantastic for them. So this is the example the Buddha used, relative reality, ultimate reality, inseparable. The people were seeing gods and chariots and the heavens. That's what their experience was. That's the relative truth. They weren't seeing something else. That's what they were seeing, that story, the story of Indra or Brahma, whatever. That's the relative truth. At the same time, none of it existed. People looking from a distance, just stones. But they saw like Brahma so beautiful, and Indra so powerful and majestic, and all those things. So Buddha's examples are not just poetry. It's not just, oh, it's like a dream, like we might say lightly. You need to look into the technicalities of those three examples to understand what Buddha is saying. Causes and conditions, in other words, interdependence, create a relative reality. So when it's the hypnotist, the fact of their willingness to go under, his power to hypnotize. In our center in Johannesburg, at one point, the secretary lady was a professional hypnotist, a Russian lady. Don't know if you met her, Greg, but anyway, yeah. But she could put a whole room under the influence in a few seconds if she wanted. Very powerful, competent hypnotist. So the coming together of the fact that the people had in their mind already these stories, Brahma, Indra, the fact that they were willing to go under, the fact that the guy had the power. Nobody else can do that. You need the power, the hypnotic power, and so on and so on. Causes and conditions, circumstances create a relative reality that seems totally all-encompassing, very real. You're seeing other people, other beings, other worlds. It's out there, it's not you. And yet, it's all taking place where? In those people's minds, through the power of interdependence. So all of Buddha's examples, the same with the mirage. Technically, we know the play of light, the fact that we've experienced water, and so on, the shiny surface of the desert. They make the mirage. And so you could be deceived and think there was water and waste a lot of time and effort going chasing after it. Of course, it's an example for life. When we think there's some goodies to be had, and sometimes the goodies aren't so good as they seemed in the first place, and they come with a big price tag of suffering. So that's life. So these examples are very real. We need to sit with them. We need to savor them. And then the dream is a similar thing. The dream is a different, perhaps the best of the examples. Why? Because you can wake up. So with a mirage, you can't switch it off, right? It's kind of there as long as you're looking at that surface, it's shimmering. And with the hypnosis, it's when the hypnotist decides, okay, we're finished, or I got to go. But with a dream, you wake up. And the first thing you realize when you wake up is, oh, I was dreaming. And it's all gone. and you're in a different world. It's like a quantum shift. And everything that was so real in the dream, the logic of it, gone. Gone. Like the mantra says, gone, gone beyond, totally gone. Like, couldn't be more gone than this. So, gone. So if in a dream you dream of somebody, it's very real, it's very meaningful. I had a very moving dream last night. I dreamt of Akon Rinpoche. It was quite strange. He was made of green light like Tara. It was kind of halfway between human and a being of light. And it was very, very moving dream. But anyway, if we dream of somebody, then they're there. If we dream of somebody, if you could have a chat with somebody else in the dream, if there's somebody, they must have been born, they must have grown up, they must have had parents. You dream of somebody, you meet them in a house. Somebody must have built the house. You might be dreaming, this house is pretty old, maybe 200 or 300 years, could do, if you're a builder, you might think could do with a bit of work. You know? There's a whole logic in the dream. The people, the places, it's so real, and the implications of how it seems. You know, like the house must have been built. The person must have had parents. Of course they are. When you're still in the dream world, of course. And if somebody came along who was enlightened in your dream and said, you know, this man you're talking to never had any parents, you'd say, you must be crazy. Everyone has parents. And you say, well, I'll see you later when you wake up and you may change your mind. But while you're in the dream, and they're saying, nobody built this house, and you see bricks and cement and all kinds of things, you just say, you're crazy. Until you wake up. And then when you wake up, not only has that reality disappeared, but the whole logic, all the paradigms that determine that reality, they're no longer valid. You're in a new world of clarity. So when we break out of the power of our stream of consciousness, it's really like waking up. And so the dream analogy is a wonderful one to explore. You know, why do we dream what we dream? Sometimes we can work it out. You wake up and gosh, that was a wacky dream. You know, why was I dreaming of, penguins doing this and so on? And then you remember, oh yeah, 2 days ago I saw a documentary about penguins, and then where they were, that's because John was talking about it yesterday. You see how all these different little threads come together and make a crazy dream. Interdependence. Where did that bit come from? Where did this bit come from? Interdependence made the dream. And then when you wake up, you realize the non-duality of the dream. What seemed other. Totally other people. A place that was other where you were. Wasn't you, you were in a place. You were in a house, you were in a country. Like last night in this dream with Rinpoche, I was in Dordogne. So all of that other wasn't other. It was you. It was your dreaming mind. How's that different from the you in the dream? How is the other person, the other place, and the you in the dream different? They're not. Your mind makes this illusion of separation out of its own stuff. It's like one of these Möbius rings. It's like you get twisted and pulled outside and you become the object of what you are. It's kind of weird. You're feeling different from your own projection. It's alien. So there's so much to think about with dreams. So we have those examples which are used throughout Buddhism in all those different stages of Vaibhashika, Sautantrika, Chittamatrin, Madhyamaka. They help us very much understand about non-duality and about the power of illusion. And then depending which school you belong to, you can spin it so that those examples fit your story, like Chittamatrin, everything's mind. The illusion of the mirage is in your mind. The dream is the mind at play, and so on. But anyway, those examples are there. They are very, very useful in helping us understand the power of illusion and that duality is not a reality, it's an illusion. When we explore each moment, when we have some strength of meditation, each moment is what it is in your experience. It doesn't, when you can explore accurately, on the spot, in the moment, you can't find two sides. How could you? If you think about it, no, think about this different. If you think about it, here I'm talking about actually in meditation, but if we think about meditation, where you're actually doing it, how could you find two sides? Can you get out of your mind to explore what is beyond your mind? What would you explore it with? I'll say that one again. If it seems like other, then it's other than you. It's other than your mind. If it's other than you, how could you check that there is other? What would you check it with? Your mind. You can't get out of your mind to check what is beyond your mind, because you've only got your mind to know with. This is a quandary that 20th century, not 21st, 20th century science, philosophy of physics of science, had to contend with. This question, realizing that everything we're measuring in terms of our mind and our own paradigms. It's very true. It's a real philosophical truth all over the world, not just for Buddhism. So then, if everything's mind, how can there be two sides at the same time? Well, if you have an answer, there's probably $1 million prize for it. Just send a stamped addressed return envelope to Buddha and you might win the prize, but I don't think anybody ever did. So those examples help us understand the power of duality in the mind. Because in a dream, you are definitely convinced, that it's other people, it's another place, it's a huge landscape, it's other. It's not you. And you wake up, and it was all you beginning to end. All your mind, all the mind. So now in these loose ends we have to tie up one very important one that I did touch on in the last talk or the talk before. And it was the 5 main tools of reasoning, the 5 main logical approaches that the middle way uses. And I remember there were the Vajrashads and the other ones. Now in those, one of them that's very important is middle way means freedom from extremes. It's not a halfway between extremes, remember, it's not a compromise. Right? If one extreme is If you remember the Buddha's quote to Kashyapa, he says, Kashyapa, permanence is one extreme, impermanence is another extreme. Whatever is neither that one nor the other, and so on, that cannot be thought of, that cannot be expressed, and so on. This is the middle way. So the middle way is not halfway between permanence and impermanence. The Buddha's teaching isn't half permanent, or half suffering, or self, no self. It's not somewhere in between where you've got half a self. It's not a compromise, the middle way, where we're half selves, half impermanent, and half suffering, and so on. Middle doesn't mean that. It simply means not extreme. So then that middle way is defined primarily by freedom from four extremes, which we have touched on: existence, non-existence, both existence and non-existence together, a mixture, and something other than existence or non-existence. So that sounds blah, 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 a lot of words, And it's where a lot of people go kind of blank and they think, I can't take any more, This is getting into some kind of words, abstract theory. Because, when we study Tibetan philosophy, it gets rattled off. Neither exists, doesn't exist, not a mixture of the two, not something other than the two, finished. It's something that we're very familiar with, but it doesn't make a lot of sense. What we're talking about is very real. It's what we believe in, and it's what we blame. We believe in ourselves, we believe in God, and then it's what we blame or what we praise. Why does everything happen the way it does? Why does life happen to me in the way it does? Why does it happen to those poor, unfortunate people there in the way it does? Or those wonderfully lucky people there in the way it does? We believe in God, or we believe in the universe, or life, or gods, a whole range of gods, or whatever it is, according to your faith. And then we're talking about ourselves, me. Who am I? What am I? So Buddha's teaching, do I exist? How do I exist? Am I an eternal soul? Am I a fixed something? So Buddha's teaching avoids the extremes of mind's conclusions. Conclusions, concepts, conceptual conclusions, where we need to say what we are. And in religions, of course, it's very important. Religions, like in the West, Christianity, you have a credo where when you join up, when you get confirmation or baptism, not baptism, confirmation, or whatever it is, you have to actually repeat, I believe this. It's very important. We believe in a creator, someone behind it all, whatever it is. And then who we are. So this is what we're talking about. Is there a fixed me? Is there a lasting me? An eternal Ken? Is there a lasting God? So we're avoiding the extremes of saying yes. Not only saying yes, but, and it's like this. Blah, blah, blah. So we avoid the extreme of existence. And this course isn't about it, because we don't have months and months together. We have hours together. But the logic, the text we would explore, Nagarjuna and so on, will go into all the details about why God, soul, everlasting gods, not impermanent gods in the realms of existence, everlasting gods, everlasting soul can't exist. We explore it a lot at length. We take apart all the arguments that other faiths bring about how they see it, and we see what's wrong with that. So we're are not falling into the extreme of saying, I am, it is, God exists, the universe is this, and so on. Not just falling into those extreme beliefs, but making those beliefs, those concepts, our mindscape, our mental landscape. So we're not falling into that extreme. But we're not falling into the other extreme of saying doesn't exist. And this is something I harp on about because this is a trap for Buddhists. Lots of Buddhists believe in non-existence. They lost it. What they believe, the way they see life is negating. I don't exist, this doesn't exist, doesn't really exist. They'll tell you that. Yeah, but then they say, yeah, but, you don't exist, or I don't exist, or that doesn't really exist. So if that's how you feel about things, come back home. You're welcome anytime. Come back to the middle way, because if you have a negating mind that's experiencing things, or people are telling you about their experience, and inside yourself you're saying doesn't exist, doesn't it? You are saying, you are thinking, thoughts, concepts. Somebody's talking to you in the back of your mind, there's this pseudo-Buddhist, not Buddhist, pseudo-Buddhist voice saying, yeah, but he doesn't really exist, or she doesn't really exist. You're in trouble. You're in deep trouble. Because you haven't understood. That's an extreme. It's a conceptual position. You've got yourself locked up in thoughts. So we avoid that. It's as bad as believing in existence. And our greatest Mahasiddha, the one who later became to come up as Saraha, he doesn't just say it's as bad as believing in existence. He says it's much worse. Buddhists who believe in non-existence, he says they're hopeless cases. And the worst thing that happens is that your potential for compassion will be destroyed by your inner thought that none of this exists. So we need to understand, through examples like the dream and the mirage, the total simultaneity of relative existence and absolute existence, how things exist. It's a relative truth, not the relative lie, relative truth and the absolute truth. So then the other two extremes are a mixture of exists and doesn't exist. Some religions believe that or believed that in the time of Buddha. It's the way they presented universe, life, God, self. And then fourth extreme, something other. So we avoid those, but this morning the loose end to tie up is that as Buddhists we do not believe in non-existence. We follow the middle way, where we just don't fall into those conceptual projections. So where does that leave you? Where does that leave us without your ideas? If I take away your ideas about people and things, what's left of you? If I'm the robber, the highwayman, who can come into your mind and take away all your preconceptions and projections of exists and doesn't exist, have I robbed you or have I done you a favor? What's left of you? What did I leave after I plundered your mind? Very good question. So, middle way doesn't fall into those. That was to mention this terrible mistake of believing in non-existence. Now also the middle way has four other extremes of thinking that we don't fall into. This is when we get specific in the exploration of exists and doesn't exist. For something to exist, it has to come into being. So they say, can something come into being? If it never came into being, it doesn't exist. So if there's something, how did it come about? So we explore arising, coming into being, summarized by the word born or birth. Something comes into being. So there's birth. So there's, again, the extremes. Either things are born or they're not born, or some crazy mixture of the two, if that's possible, or something else, which, well, what would the other something else be? Can't tell. But this coming into authentic being truly born. We have to add those words, otherwise English language deceives us. What the original philosophers meant when they say comes into being means comes into authentic, own, independent being. It exists in its own right, independently, not dependent on anything else. That's what birth would mean, born. Now, of course, on our relative level, everything comes into being. That's the Buddha's teaching. It's the Buddha's teaching. Everything that arises through causes and conditions exists for a while and then disappears. All that is built up will be destroyed. The end of all meeting is parting. The end of all accumulation is dispersal. Very fundamental part of the Buddha's teaching. And like if we see the birth of a child, from the conception of a child, what do they say? Before you were a glint in your father's eye or your mother's eye, from sort of the moment of conception, when the cell gets consciousness and then growing up with a body, and then that body growing up, getting information in society, being born, getting information, being programmed by all sorts of things. Of course, we see something coming into being and existing, and at the end, ending. Everything's like that. It's a huge part of the Buddha's teaching. So when we talk about born and unborn, we're not talking about that. Relatively things in our own experience, of course, everything's like that. It has a beginning, it has an end, and a middle, because it's got a beginning and an end. Otherwise the beginning would be the end. There wouldn't be anything. So once you've got a beginning and an end, there's a middle automatically. Everything's like that on a relative level of our experience. Everything. We're not talking about that when we talk about unborn or born. It's that if there is an eternal God, if there is an eternal soul, an eternal me, or if we think of things as lasting independently, lasting, being independent, not dependent, then this is where middle way explores the possibility of can something come into being. And Nagarjuna, Chandrakirti later on, following on from Nagarjuna's teachings, Chandrakirti's entering the middle way, text Majjhimakkhavattara, really tackles this whole question of coming into being. How could something come into its own being, authentic being, lasting being, rather than illusory, interdependent being, like a mirage, like a dream, like a conjuration. Not like that, something that really exists, all on its own, no matter what. We're only talking about that when we talk about absolute truth. True being, authentic being, independent being. Very important. So I needed to mention those extremes because now when most of you, you're following Vajrayana teachings, all of this course is about Mahayana philosophy. We're in Vajrayana teachings where the word unborn is used. We have it in our beautiful poetry. We talk about the unborn state, the unborn mind. And that is totally related to all these stages, progressive stages of emptiness, and about belief that something actually exists. In here, as yourself, out there as God, the universe, stuff, people. So can something come into being? So we explore coming into being. We find there cannot be authentic, lasting, independent being, but through the tools we acquire in that wisdom, voidness, shunyata, is the wisdom that knows the difference between what seems to be and what really is. So in our seems to be world, like a dream, maybe you need a sip of coffee or tea or a tranquilizer or a happy pill at this point. Or the off button for your computer. In our dream-like, mirage-like, magic show-like world that the Buddha and the Dharma teach us about in great detail, there is seemingly cause and effect. Karma and its consequences, exemplified so often by the Buddha of the rice seed that produces the rice shoot. No seed, no shoot. No way in this whole world you can get a rice shoot without a rice seed. Correct? No way. No way. One day it will come. IBM will rearrange electrons and they'll make a rice shoot out of electrons. But just now, in our world, no shoot, no seed, no shoot. And whenever there's a shoot, there must have been a seed. Whenever there is suffering, like of poverty, there must have been the karma of greed and stealing, or whatever it was in the past. Whenever there's a suffering, just now of illness, of early death, and so on, there must have been in a past life. This is the Buddha's teaching. It's fundamental explanation of how our relative reality, our dream-like world, this illusion works. It's an illusion, but it works according to very strict rules. It's like CGI. The films you see, these films which are totally computer generated, it's an illusion, but the illusions are created according to very strict rules of programming and manipulation. It's an illusion, but it's an illusion that has laws, the laws of Dharma, the rules of Dharma. That's what the Buddha teaches. But when we look into it with logic, it is possible for causes to make results. If we need to be absolutely honest and true, not kidding ourselves, not deluding ourselves, it just can't happen. Now, why that's true, I can't tell you today. So we don't have the time. So that's my, that's my, how can you say, escape clause. But give me a couple of weeks and a month, we can go through Chandrakirti and you'll see, and Nagarjuna, both of them. You can see it just can't happen. Or a shortcut, if you're a meditator and you get this marvelous experience of being in the moment, and you realize there's only this moment and it's gone. And you'll never get it back, and it will never happen again. And there's only the next moment, and the next moment. When your mind is awake, this is how it is. If you practice mindfulness, you practice shamatha, and so on, you'll just realize that the past is, it couldn't be more gone. It's so gone. It's totally gone. It's never going to happen again. And we've got this thing called a memory, which is a very poor reproduction, but the actual past, it's gone forever. Finished. Future didn't happen. Who the hell knows what's going to happen tomorrow? None of us. There's only this moment, then it's gone. And another moment. And then it's only if, and you can't do this normally with your mind. You can do it with logic and thinking, but if you step back and you put all those moments together as a story, then you can see, in that moment you put a rice seed in the ground. And in that moment it rained. And in that moment you did this. And then later on, in that moment, you found this shoot growing in the water. A rice shoot. And you let it grow and you let it grow. And in the end, in another moment, you had a lovely bowl of rice. All because of the seed. So we can step back and work it out. And it's infallible. It's infallible. But when we look closely, we just get these moment after moment. And how could this, in this moment, produce that in the next moment? Because in the next moment, this is gone. And in the previous moment, this wasn't making that. That hadn't happened yet. And if we try and come down closer in time to a tiny moment, like differentiation in mathematics, it's still the same thing. What's there in this moment doesn't have the future happening yet. And what it's going to become, once it becomes it, that's gone. We cannot find becoming in any one moment. There's just what's there. And mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling once you get into it. So, and Buddha, he was so wise. I mean, it's incredible. He didn't actually say a rice seed produces a rice shoot. In the Rice Shoot Sutra, which is a very hard one to pronounce quickly, the Rice Shoot Sutra, right? In the Rice Shoot Sutra, he says, when there is this, there will be that. So he's holding up a rice seed and a rice shoot. When there is that, there must have been this. But he doesn't actually say this produces that. It's a very subtle teaching. It seems obvious, a guy's sitting down saying, look, when there's a rice seed, it'll make a rice shoot. Sure, everybody knows that. And when he says there's a rice shoot, Must have come from a seed, sure. What's the big deal? Where's the wisdom? But there's just so much skill in that way he stated that. So anyway, I got a bit distracted with that. But it's to try and help you understand, this middle way, and that we avoid the extremes of thinking, the extreme of thinking that things come into being. And it's why when we get to the Mahamudra level, this Kamapa, third Kamapa in the prayer says, this mystery. And this is what we need. We need a sense of mystery. If you've got a sense of, I've got it all worked out, because I've read the Buddhist books, don't. Then concepts are concepts. Last time we looked at the limits of concepts, remember? A real person, a painting, a sketch, a cartoon drawing, how limited a thought is, how we can say the word flower or something, and it's nothing compared with the reality the word or the concept represents. So our ideas about what's happening all the time, our explanations, we use clever ideas, true ideas, correct deduction and logic to correct our incorrect logic and deduction, our illusions. As far as words can go, we get the words and the concepts straight, but all with the intention of going beyond concepts. So the concepts of karma, cause and effect, the concepts of impermanence, the concepts of no self, and so on, that are the basic tools of our first steps in Buddhism, are very, very needed then. But as we mature and our mind and our experience matures, we need to go beyond the extremes of self and no self, beyond the extremes of existence and non-existence, beyond the extremes of suffering and happiness. All of those dualities, because the conceptual mind is basically a conflictual mind, and a mind full of contradictions. So we sort them out as best we can with ideas and logic and study, but then to get to the real truth of the matter, we need to transcend all concepts. So we talk about the non-conceptual and the non-dual. This idea of subject-object, self and other, me and you, something we perceive and our perceiving mind, and so on, we need to go beyond. So let's make it a little bit more complicated. So now, see, how far did we get in our journey through the steps of Sunyata? We got to zhen-tong, devoid of other. There is nothing other than Buddha mind. So the zhen-tong was a fusion of Madhyamaka and Chittamatra, and then taking it further. In the language we use when we go further through practice and through Vajrayana practice, we do talk about non-duality, but we talk a lot also about non-triplicity. So I need to mention that. So sometimes it's called the three spheres or the three realms. I don't know if that helps or confuses, but anyway, triplicity. So duality is this side, that side, me, you, subject, object, perceiver, perceived. Triplicity is those two with their interaction. You, me, interaction. Karma, sometimes. Perceiving mind, perceived object, perception taking place. So subject, object, interaction is triplicity. And in Vajrayana we talk a lot in Mahamudra practice about not just going beyond duality, but going beyond triplicity. Because when you look at the reality of life, the problem is in number 3. We can't help until we're free, but have a two-sided perception. No matter how much you believe in non-duality, the world will still appear to you as something other. Even you tell yourself a Buddhist story, it's not other, it's all my mind, or it's whatever. Chittamatra Majjhimaka story you tell yourself, other people will still be other people. You can't control them with your mind, and they'll do what they'll do, and life will do what it does. And even inside here, your own body will sometimes feel like a stranger. You'll be there, unwell or getting old, and somehow your beautiful mind, your beautiful mind is in this aging, ailing body, which seems like something other than you. How did I end up in this thing? You look at it in the mirror and you think, what's that? And you can't say it's me anymore. Maybe when you're younger, sort of 19 years old, you can look and it looks pretty good and you can say, that's me. But then when you're falling apart and you look in the mirror, that can't be me. So anyway, this manifestation of two-sidedness takes a long time to go. 8th Bodhisattva level, that's way up there, that's almost Buddha. That is so pure. So the actual two-sided feeling is not going to go away quickly. Two-sided thinking, dualistic concepts we can get rid of earlier. But the actual what's called dualistic split of mind, which is the work of the 7th consciousness out of the 8th consciousnesses, that takes a long time to go. So there's going to be self and other, but that's not a problem. It's the interaction. It's when you hate the other, when the other upsets you, or when you desire the other, and so on. It's the interaction that causes the good karma, the bad karma, that makes a path to liberation or a path to heavier rebirth. So this third aspect, subject-object interaction, is not just an unnecessary extra bit of theory, it's the important bit. So, and it's one we can work on from day one. You see, the dualistic split, the dualistic thinking will take a lot of work, and work that will only really be successful if there's a lot of meditation experience. But the interaction between subject and object, we can start working on that to make it virtuous, helpful, more liberated from day one, with the very basic Buddhist teachings, and then deeper and deeper teachings about how we see each other, as future Buddhas, as past mothers, and so on. There's a lot of teachings that can help us with the interaction. So I needed to mention triplicity. Rang-tong, zhen-tong, if you got your head around those a little bit in this course or through other means, what is our view in the Kagyu tradition? Because that's mainly from what I'm teaching you, the Kagyu tradition. And Khenpo Tsultrim was in the Kagyu tradition. Are we rang-tong or are we zhen-tong? Well, neither. It depends. It's a wonderful phrase, that. It depends. And because sometimes if you look back at biographies of the Karmapas, it will look like, and then according to the understanding of the biographer, that this particular Karmapa really promoted zhen-tong view. But then you get the next Karmapa, the next incarnation, who seems to be talking, you read his writings, teachings, seem to be rang-tong. Now this is confusing. You think we depend on Karmapa as our guide. He's the top of the pile in the Karma Kagyu. So if he hasn't got it sorted, how can we get it sorted? One incarnation is zhen-tong, one incarnation is rang-tong, which takes us back to the basic use of Sunyata teachings, the wisdom that sees the difference between how it really is and how it seems to be, that wisdom development. All Sunyata teachings are remedies. You don't need a remedy unless something's wrong. So we have something wrong, we're causing suffering because we are egotistic, then we need the teachings of the voidness of ego, the Sunyata of ego. There is no self, and so on. And then if we have got made too solid and got too attached to the Hinayana idea of the five aggregates and all of their details and the language, then we need the Sunyata teachings of the Heart Sutra. No eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no consciousness, none of those things. They don't really exist. All of the Sunyata teachings that we've been going through step by step are remedies for what was not quite right on the level below. And so in the time of some Karmapas, then people were too rang-tongish. They were seeing non-existence everywhere. The remedial teachings were too strong, so they needed to correct the balance by a lot more emphasis on Buddha nature, the interconnectedness of everything. It's because everything is interconnected that things have no own nature. Needed to emphasize the zhen-tong. But then people go and they lean the other way. It's like a tower you're trying to connect. They lean too much this way, so you zhen-tong them. And you zhen-tong them and they get back to center, but then they're too zhen-tonged and they're all going around babbling zhen-tong, and now, it's as though Buddha nature exists and they've made it too solid. And this affirmation of everything, so then you need to tell them, everything's interconnected, but none of those things really exist. So if none of them exist, what does interconnectedness mean? A load of interconnected nothingness doesn't make a something. So you rang-tong them, and gradually they get back to the middle way. So it's not that that karmapa was deluded or less wise than the next one. It's that their job is to keep their followers of their age in the best place. So they need to give, if they're giving teachings, the teachings are remedial for their situation. But between you and me, okay, I never told you this, but our Rinpoches, what would their own view be? Not what they're teaching us, because we need to hear this to Rim, but, and it's beautiful, it's so succinct, it's splendid, it's wonderful. We say in Tibetan, it is kun sop rang-tong dun-dam zhen-tong. If you know any Tibetan, it's only 8 syllables. Kun sop rang-tong dun-dam zhen-tong. Relative void in itself, ultimate devoid of other. Ultimate truth, there's nothing else but that. It's like when you wake up from the dream, there's nothing else. There never was anything else. The house in the dream never was built. Nobody had to take it apart when your dream stopped. There's not a rubbish house somewhere in a dream rubbish tip. You know, the people of Drenpo. It never existed in the first place in its own right, only as your illusion. So when we wake up, there never was anything in the dream. When the mirage goes, you know, the sun goes behind a cloud. It's not that there was a something to go somewhere. It's just that experience. It's gone. And when people wake up from the hypnosis, all the gods and the Deva realms that never really existed, gone. So from the point of view of ultimate truth, there's nothing else. There's only Buddha mind. And then we could go further. I'm not sure what course will follow this. I'm almost thinking of doing the first 3 chapters of the Buddha nature, of the Buddha nature text, not the Buddha nature chapter itself. But there we see the first words about Buddha. Without beginning, without end, never came into being, was never born. You can't really understand those words unless you've done this course, to understand what unborn means, and no beginning, no end. Buddha mind. So from the ultimate point of view, only ever been perfection. Everything perfect. From the point of view of ultimate mind. It doesn't mean, like some silly Buddhists go around and say, everything's perfect. You know, people killing each other, that's perfect. Yeah. It's a great perfection. Everything's perfect. And it doesn't mean everything on this relative level is perfect. From when the mind is awake, the word Buddha means awake, like the dream finished. There is nothing but the indescribable, perfect love and wisdom of a Buddha mind. But on a relative level, then everything is rang-tong. Everything is devoid of a own reality. It's like the dream experience. It's like the mirage experience. It's like the hypnosis. And the two are inseparable. There's no problem. They're not two things. There is no paradise. There is no ultimate reality other than the ultimate reality of this relative moment. That's so deep. But you shouldn't have a problem with it. I mean, these days in physics, we all know that a solid rock, you know, it's so solid. And yet physics tells us it's just space and energy. But you don't have a problem putting those two things together, do you? You know it's only space and energy, but as far as we're concerned, it's impenetrable. That's on our relative level, we can't go through rocks. Even though we know that we're just space. and that's just space. But you don't have a problem. This inseparability of relative and ultimate is so important. And it's why you get all those kissy, cuddly images in Vajrayana. They're very explicit. Wow, total, wow, blissful union, male, female, is to show inseparability of absolute and relative. There's no absolute over there and the relative down here separate. It's the two inseparable sides of the same thing. It's very, very deep. So I wanted to say that. I wanted to say, to kind of help you in the digesting of these type of teachings, don't think you've got it sorted. Not just because, now earlier on, don't think you've got it sorted because of ideas, where you've got it all explained. You've got it all sorted, you're very, a lot of Buddhism, so you've got explanations. That's one way. Don't think you've got it sorted because you haven't. But now in practice, in meditation, don't think you've got it sorted. Because you haven't. You wouldn't be here in Ken's teachings if you had. You'd be teaching Ken somewhere, right? You wouldn't be here. But how can you think you've got it sorted? Is you hear beautiful teachings, Dzogchen teachings, Mahamudra teachings, and they tell you, if the mind can get free and look at itself, your mind looks at itself, and it's beyond all the blah, 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 and the projections of me and her, me and him, this and that, and you just let your mind discover itself. And it's free, it's peaceful, it's clear. And you find that clarity and you think, oh, this is it. And on top of it, they tell you, yeah, it's so simple, nobody gets it. This is the whole point. And you think, okay, oh, well, I've done that then. That's my Mahamudra and Dzogchen finished, because you've actually discovered that by letting the mind be auto-reflective, self-reflective, be inside its own space. They say, there's the clouds that come and go, your mind is like space, and you find the space, you say, that's great. And you're quite used to being in the space, and all your history is going by, and it doesn't get you anymore. Fantastic. I'm liberated, man. But you don't even need to think that, because that's just a thought, and you see that thought go by. There's just the space. You think you got it sorted. When that space is your default space, stably, every day, all the time, that's something like first bodhisattva level. But what Khenpo Tsultrim, because we're in his teachings, told me several times, but very strongly, he really wanted me to understand. He wasn't just talking, it was private, and he wanted me to understand. He'd say, look, Ken, if you are a second level bodhisattva, you can have no idea what it's like to be on third level. When your mind, your heart breaks through to that level of clarity and Buddha nature connection, you're already connected. But because you've taken away your karmic history, debris, to another level, what remains of you in there, even though your default nature is the space, still stuff comes up. It will do until you're totally Buddha, but less and less, so you're clearer and clearer. He said, you cannot imagine what a third level is like. It will be a wonder, a breakthrough when you get there. And the third level, cannot imagine what the fourth level is like. And then you go all the way up to a 10th level, like Buddha Maitreya or Chenrezig, Bodhisattva. And it says the difference between the 10th level Bodhisattva and a Buddha is like this. The difference in their ability to help others, there's no difference. 10th level Bodhisattva is as useful to everybody as a Buddha. They are totally equipped, they have all the skills, everything. But in terms of the scope of their wisdom, it's like the difference between the water in an ox's hoofprint and the water in an ocean. Right? From 10th level Bodhisattva, you know how much water you can get? An ox has trodden in the mud, squelch, fills up with water, gluk, 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 that much water, and then the Atlantic Ocean. From 10th level Bodhisattva to Buddha, this wisdom, this sacred space, this Buddha nature, as we go through the 10 levels, will just beautifully evolve. So please don't think you've got it sorted when you've got some experience of the space in which it all happens. It's wonderful you got that far. It's absolutely wonderful and to be respected and praised, but it's just the beginning. So I wanted to share with you something very simple now that we've gone up now into Vajrayana and some rounding off of ends. Just a story. It's a couple of stories put together because I was thinking this morning. So it's a story from Ken's thinking, right? I've got this fox that comes and visits from time to time. Right? And I was admiring this fox's wisdom because there are quite a few water points in my garden for birds and animals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And where I feed the fox, when he comes, there's a bowl of water. But even though there's a bowl of water right next to him, right, he's just eaten stuff. And there's a bowl of water there. He goes down to what is the best bowl of water. And that's the water, there's a dripping tap, very slow drips. So that water is kept fresh. And he goes all the way down there to drink it. He didn't need to do sampling and go around all the different waters. He just knew, right? He's got a wisdom that we humans have lost. He's an animal. They know about water, whether it's the smell or whatever. He goes for the best. He's got water wisdom. Now, that made me think of something totally different, which is something that blew my mind when I was with Khenpo Tsultrim. I'd seen a film, I think it's a Truffaut, this French director, Truffaut film. It's called L'Enfant Sauvage, The Wild Child. It's based on a true story, I think in the 1800s, end of the 1800s. There was one of these children that's abandoned or that was brought up by animals and then lived wild in the woods and grew up naked, living wild like whatever animals brought him up as a boy, but then started raiding villages for food. And so they caught him, and then he ended up with a professor who wanted to see if he could turn this wild animal human into an educated human. So he wanted to teach him like to walk upright, to eat like we eat, to have language. So that was a true story, and then they made a film of that called The Wild L'Enfant Sauvage. And there's one part in that film where he's in the professor's study and he's thirsty, and the professor gives him a glass of water. So rather than just drink it because he's thirsty, beautifully filmed, this boy takes it over to the window, and out of the window you can see the forests and the little river, where he grew up, where he was happy probably, or happier. And he doesn't look the water. He sips it with his eyes, after he's looked out the window, with his eyes closed. He sips it. And that sip of water in the film is like he is taking in all of this vast, wild life, as opposed to what the humans are trying to do with him. So I'd seen that film, and I was with Khenpo in the Dordogne. We had a very nice chateau, zhen-tong here, where we were studying for 6 months. And at one point, he took a glass of water, and I saw him go over to the window and look out the window and sip it, and it was just, it was like the film, but in real life. Now, Khenpo lived wild for some years after the Chinese invasion. He didn't leave Tibet straight away. He meditated in the ruins of monasteries. He practiced Chut practice, and he lived in a very wild way. He'd lived in nature, and he probably regained some of this wisdom of water. And when he drank the water, he was looking out the window. It really, really moved me. So this was just, this isn't deep philosophy, it's just a story I'm sharing with you, right? About the fox and about the Khenpo, about the wisdom of water and what real wisdom is. Real wisdom, and not being deluded, has such depth to it. There's the bodhisattva levels, but it will never be acquired just through words. So to conclude, I'm just looking at my notes of what I wanted to say today. Now we're finishing this section, which is voidness of everything. And in 2 weeks' time, because next week there's nothing, next Saturday there's no formal teaching, there's no Tonglen, I'm not available, so there's nothing next Saturday, we have a break. But we go into compassion for everyone. Compassion has many aspects, as we'll discover. But in one of the heart teachings from the 16th Karmapa, he says that one of the deepest acts of compassion that we can accomplish is renunciation. Sometimes we think of compassion as going out helping people, but the deepest way we can help people is by letting go, renouncing. Now, renunciation has many levels. There's the material renunciation, where people renounce the world, they become monks, nuns, monastics, and many levels of working with all the emotions and habits that are related to our materiality. But then spiritually, renunciation means renouncing our fixed ideas, being open to learn and to grow and to become natural, I think is the word, alive in the moment and learning what words can never give us. Now, in order to learn from the living moment, to learn from life powerfully, effectively, so that we really change, we need to get out of our very fixed mentality and positions. So renunciation is very much to do with that in Vajrayana. It's why we do the visualizations and so on. When you look behind what's going on, we are letting go of our old self as quickly and efficiently and as totally as we can do. When you visualize, especially in retreat, all day long, you're Buddha. All day long. That's how you see yourself. That's how you relate to everything. We leave the old person behind. So when you look deeply or wisely into what that kind of renunciation of fixed persona, fixed ideas, because our persona is rooted in our ideas, involves, this brings us absolutely to these teachings on wisdom, on Sunyata. They show us how to understand the difference between the way it seems to us when we start and how it really is. So step by step, stage by stage, we shed the illusions. It's like waking up from the sleep. That renunciation is the deepest act of compassion, and it really is a deep tie point, connection point between wisdom and compassion, which can seem like quite different things on the outside. So thank you very much. We'll dedicate and then have our discussion moment. So let's dedicate not just for today, but for this whole first section of 8 talks on voidness of everything. May whatever virtue was created by these sessions contribute to the state of omniscience being attained, by the main enemy, our mind's defilements, being completely defeated. Through that, may each and every being become free from the ocean of existence, troubled by its waves of rebirth, aging, sickness, and death. May this precious bodhicitta arise in those in whom it's not arisen. May its development know no setbacks, and may it increase ever more and more. Through this virtue, may we quickly achieve Mahamudra and establish every single sentient being in that same accomplishment. Ooh, part 1 done. Relief. So, over to you. I don't know if you've got anything you'd like to add or... And hello to those I missed at the beginning. Oh, I see a few faces. Eric, Susan, Pushpa, Leo.
Ken.
Yes, Kim.
Hi, I'm sorry, it's not actually about this, it's just a query that you were discussing earlier about, you know, the evening about Akong Rinpoche.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Well, unfortunately, I missed it. So would you know, is it recorded at all, or is there any way to access it for people who also may have missed?
Yes, and it's something I meant to announce. So, of course, it wasn't set up by me. It was set up by this organisation in Edinburgh. And so they've got the recording, and I understand they're willing to make it available to people, but not to publish it. They won't make a public thing. But if you write to them, and I give you the email just now, then they'll give you the link for the recording. I think they would like a donation. I don't know if they have a fixed donation or, you know, they just say give what you feel for giving. But that's the way they keep, you know, by organising these talks, it's the way they finance their own organisation and its work. So that's quite
Sure.
valid. So let me just look at that. So the email is to a guy called Neil, Neill, and the email is MESP 2022 at hotmail.com. So MESP, monkey, elephant, squirrel, penguin, right? MESP 2022 at hotmail.com, and that's Neil.
Lovely. Thanks very much.
It was a nice session. I enjoyed it and very much.
Yeah, I think it was an excellent session, as I said at the time. We had to pay 10 sterling to register, so I suspect that to get the recording, it's probably going to be something similar.
Oh, yeah.
I have a comment or a reference that's not particularly related to Sunyata, but you spoke a lot today about dreams. And there's anybody interested in dreams, and most people are, I think. There's a very interesting book called An Experiment with Time, which was published in 1927 by a J.W. Dunn. He gives a method for remembering your dreams when you wake up and recording them, and sort of putting an evaluation on them as to whether something happened recently. I mean, you mentioned penguins, for example. So if you happen to see penguins 2 days ago, it's not surprising that you might dream about penguins tonight. But it also involves putting an evaluation on the likelihood of something happening dreaming about something that's going to happen in the future, in the so-called future. To take a horrible example, you might dream of a plane crash. And there's a reasonable likelihood that in the next few days or week, there will be a plane crash. But if you dream about a particular way that a plane crashed and that it was a Boeing 737 with 451 passengers and only 2 survived, and that happened the following day or the day after, then that's quite interesting. So you can begin to see that you dream about some things that happened to you or you experienced a couple of days before. Some are sort of dreamt up from this storehouse consciousness from childhood or wherever. But also you can begin to see that sometimes you dream about things that happen in the future. So your sense of this past, present, and future begins to break down. So that's a long-winded recommendation for the book, but if anybody's interested, it's called An Experiment with Time.
Is that done D-U-N-N or D-O-N-N-E?
It's J.W. Dunn, D-U-N-N-E.
D-U-N-N-E, all right. Yes, there are some people who come from the future, which doesn't make any sense, but they do. And they have sometimes very helpful things to say. Premonitions, I mean, the stream of consciousness is, and when we study karma, it says most of the main elements of this life, the story that we go through, is already programmed before we're born. How long we'll live, the people we'll meet, the big things, health, sickness, and changing locations, and those kind of major things. It's a story already written. So it's not as though our mind can go forward into the future. It's more that our mind taps into the programming that's there for the future So then we pick up on what's going to happen. And, even if it's other people who crash in an airplane, and we don't know any of them, but we're going to hear about it. So it will be part of our stream of consciousness experience. I had a friend, he's dead now, a scientist, one of the people who invented radar, and John. And he was living in Mudlo. Those of you who know Samiling know that one of the houses that it bought near Samiling, called Mudlo, belonged to Samiling at one point. And we put residents there. They had to walk over every day, over the hills, rain or shine. So one night he had this very, very vivid dream of dolphins. There were dolphins caught in a net, huge fishing net. And he was incredibly distressed. He came over really very, very upset. He's saying, "This is terrible, they're dying, the net's crushing them, they're panicked." And then later that day on the news, they showed how dolphins had been liberated from fish nets. They'd been caught up in a fishing net. So he'd kind of, however it was, either in the actual moment he'd connected with them, or in his stream of consciousness he picked up on what was going to come in the days, I don't know. But that was quite vivid, because at first we all thought he was getting a bit over the top about a dream, Being Buddhist, they would say, "Oh, it's just a dream, John. You're only dreaming and there must be a reason for it." But then when it was on the news, then we all thought a bit more that he'd picked up on something. Any feedback on how you found these teachings? I mean, besides sort of positive feedback, like useful or enjoyed them, more anybody who found it was like too abstract or something missing, or what you would have liked to have heard a bit more about?
Ken?
Yeah.
I like these teachings very much. In the sense that they go to a level of philosophy that I really like. So thank you for that. I'm not missing anything. I'm picking up on all the things you're saying, and it kind of resonates and fits into like pieces of a puzzle into other pieces that are already there or need to be removed or moved elsewhere. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you, Anne. Thank you.
Can I just say, Ken, the one thing, well, one of the many that I have realized in this is that I just don't meditate enough. I think about it, like you say, I think about, I read books and I listen to teachings on tapes and things, but it's all like cerebral, and it's not actually doing the meditation. It's not actually experiencing it. And I really need to do more. I've realized that. So in a way, it's been a big kick up the backside for me to actually just sit with it more, So, but it's also made me realize, not just realize, there's so much else than just what I experience, where I am in this world of mine. There's so much more. It's hard to explain. I'm sorry.
No, it's very clear. And I think all of us can say that. I can
Yeah,
certainly say that. I need to meditate more and get out my own box more,
yeah.
for sure, for sure.
But it's actually, you read about, oh yes, there's a lot more like out there, if you like, or in here, inside. But I've just suddenly started to realize that maybe it's just cracking at the walls a bit, that I'm starting to realize that yes, there is, and isn't it wonderful?
Yeah.
And like you said earlier, you made this comment that really I was blown away by. Buddha was such an incredible, incredible being.
Oh,
To do all this, to come up with all this in the time, in the era that he lived. I mean, we have the likes of quantum physics and everything that you mentioned, but in a way, it's like it opens our eyes slightly, so we're not quite as, whoa, isn't this amazing? But it's still in the era that he was. It's just amazing. And thank you for putting it in the terms that we don't realize often, I think, living in the 21st century, how things actually were back then. So when you explained about the hypnotist, that's incredible, because we can turn the telly on and we're suddenly in a different world, watching Matrix or whatever. I've given you a hint of my viewing there. But they didn't have anything like that. All of the people back then. And it's just incredible. It's just, whoa, it pops all over, So thank you. Anyway, I'm sorry it's a bit long-winded.
Oh, it's very helpful. It's very helpful. And that, I mean, when you see it in translations, it says like a conjuration or like a magic show. And people don't know that. They just don't know. If you hear those words, what do you think of? A conjuration, magic show, and they don't know that it was and it's a very good example, because not only did it take people totally into that world of being hypnotized, but people from a distance could see what was going on. and in one of Tilopa's stories, one of the people he converts is a very powerful-minded person who he's a mass hypnotist. So he hires himself out to kings. I mean, kingdoms were small in India. They weren't even the size of counties sometimes. But he would hire himself out because he could manifest whole armies. So if they were going into battle, the enemy would see all these magnificent soldiers approaching. They just give up. He didn't even need to fight, which is a big advantage. He had the power to mass hypnotize. So Tilopa knew that this person was spiritually ready for awakening. And he went to see him. And at one point the guy manifested the armies, and Tilopa just looked at him with a special tantric, looked at the soldiers, gaze, and they all dropped dead. And so the guy said, "How can you do that? You are Buddhist. Look, you just killed 100 soldiers." And Tilopa said, 100 soldiers? This was all your mind. And the guy had got so much into his own projections that he, all of a sudden, like this, and that kind of blew open the walls of his mind, and then he learned very, very quickly. Tilopa, I mean, Buddha was wonderful, but Tilopa, I like his sense of humor. There's another story of Tilopa, and there's this guy who was an instrument player, whether it was a sitar or a veena or one of the instruments of, whatever they had at the time. But he was really good. He's sort of the Ravi Shankar of the area. And those people, they're gurus. They're not just musicians. They are actually gurus. They follow sound. Sound is their vehicle for liberating the mind, and they teach. He was a sound guru, wonderful player. So this guy, because he was a guru and because he was special, ready to go, ready to be awakened, Tilopa was drawn to him. And so this guy's in probably some nice garden and playing and has all the audience absolutely captivated. And Tilopa just starts whistling. But his whistling is so fascinating and beautiful that it's not like when somebody coughs in a concert and everyone's, well, you're distracting from our music. It was this whistling somehow. It was, and then the guru sitar player, he got really kind of jealous and is probably doing his best. It becomes like one of these instrumental battles, but it's just whistling, nothing special. And in the end, he gets up and said, "How do you do that? How do you make the music so enthralling, so captivating?" And then he said, "Well, if you want to learn something, I can teach you." So this guy is demoted suddenly from being like guru, top of the pile, to somebody with something to learn. And it was breaking through that ego barrier was the main thing. And after that, because he had such a controlled mind, he had a whole beautiful discipline through learning to play music and so on. He was really ready to go at a fast rate. So, Kim, yes, we all need to meditate some more, but maybe now you're well primed. Maybe you can go off like a rocket.
Who knows, eh?
Yeah. Okay, so I wish you all very, very well, and see you all being well in 2 weeks' time, and have a great time in between.
Ta very much, Ken.
Okay.
Cheers, Ken. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye for now.
Try everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone.
Mm-hmm.